Okay, class, today I'm going to cover chapters 8 and 9 together. Okay, the video might be a little bit longer, but these two chapters are so interrelated with technical decontamination, mass decontamination. We might as well just talk about the process of decontamination together. So first thing I want you guys to understand is there's basically three forms of decontamination. You got emergency decontamination, mass decontamination, technical decontamination. Within those is a technique that we refer to as a gross decontamination. That's not its own type. We use gross decontamination in all these other actual types of decontamination. Gross decontamination just means knocking off the big particles. We usually do that with copious amounts of water. But if it's a dry particle, then we could knock that off with a brush or something like that. That would be considered gross decontamination. Just down and dirty, get rid of as much as you can. So as we start rolling through chapter 8, what you come under the understanding is that technical decontamination is a lengthier process. This is not something that we do in an emergency setting with a patient or with somebody who's been exposed. Technical decontamination is set up for entry team and backup team members. It's very systematic, usually 3 to 5 different stages where you're going to step into stage 1. You have other members there that are in gear, and they're going to scrub off your outer gear. And then you're going to step to stage 2, and you're maybe going to remove a layer. And then you're going to decontaminate again. Then you step to stage 3, and you continue that process. Or you might need 2 or 3 stages to scrub your outer layer before we consider that it's secure and there's no longer potential for contamination before you move through the process. So it's made specifically for entry and backup team, for us as rescuers, not for the public, not in the emergency setting. Okay, so that's one thing that you need to know. It does talk about absorption and adsorption. That's important that you know the difference between ad and ab. Know which one works like Velcro, okay, and sticks to it, and which one actually combines with it in a chemical level and makes it less harmful. Dilution is what we usually use, and we use water. It's readily available, it's cheap. When you talk about disinfection or you talk about evaporation, we don't use that. Solidification we do use in the field. We use peat moss, and that's basically pouring this substance on there that helps to solidify a liquid that we can then shovel it out. It happens to work by adsorption as well. So we've got that. Isolation and disposal. This is an important concept to note, because if you're not ready to decontaminate an item, an object, then we're going to isolate it. We're going to set it aside. We're going to back away from it. We're going to keep a nice area until we can deal with it. Okay, so that's important. Remember that the decontamination corridor should be the only way out of the hot zone and into the cold zone. Okay, you got to go through decon. If you went into the hot zone, you got to come through decon to get out. And that's important, particularly when we're talking about mass decontamination, funneling those people through that specific decontamination corridor. Whereas technical, we're in control, we're in a suit, it's not a pandemonium, we can just orderly work our way through the technical decontamination process. In evaluation afterwards, that's important, and how we normally do that is at the end of our corridor there's a monitoring station. So we have 1 or 2 individuals there that are either maybe using litmus paper, maybe they're using a combustible gas indicator, maybe they're using some other monitoring device to show, hey, I'm not picking up any readings now that you're out of decontamination, so therefore it was an effective process. Okay, so make sure you know those particular topics that I kind of hit over. Now, as far as chapter 9, when you're talking about mass decontamination is similar to emergency decontamination, which is basically, hey, we pull up on scene, there's a big puddle of green stuff, and there's somebody laying in it, and they're alive. So we need to get out, we need to run into the nasty green stuff, grab them, drag them out, and the other member is going to just grab a hose line and just start hosing everybody off, and we're all going to strip down, and we're going to drag this person and get them some treatment. Okay, that's emergency decon. You can't do that with, let's say, an Intel that has 2,000 employees there, okay, and 150 or 200 have been exposed. We can't do that same method, but we need to do something very similar. So that's where mass decontamination comes in. All right, in the city of Chandler and most major cities, we have basically a giant tent, and you can kind of see a picture of one of them on page 209. All right, and ours has 4 lanes. It's inflatable, so we fill it up with SCBA bottles. The thing blows up. It has hose connections. It has little chutes, so people step into 2 lanes for women, 2 lanes for men. All right, and they step in the first room. That's where they derobe, throw their clothes out the chute. It comes outside the tent. We can scoop it up, bag it up. They go to the next one. It's got overhead hoses. They can grab the hose, spray themselves off with water. Go to the next one. It's got soap and water. Soap themselves off. Next one's got water again. And then they come out the other side, and we provide them with like a disposable gown, something like that, and they come out decontaminated, and we're just monitoring at the end. It's really nice. It allows for some privacy. It's very effective, and it's good. Sometimes we might not have time to set up that tent. It does take time, obviously, and manpower to set that up. So we do have some other options, and so those options are kind of detailed out in the book. Normally what we would go with is a funnel with 2 apparatus, usually engines, and we'd place them in a V formation. Obviously, the employees would be coming into the chute, so we've got them naturally funneled, and on the sides of the apparatus are either hose strings from hoses that are deployed, or we're using the side discharges with nozzles on them, and it's just a continuous cones of water. So as you're walking through, you have to disrobe, okay, and get showered with copious amounts of water. People in the private sector are not super happy about this method often. The water that comes out of the mains is, in the 70s or colder. Okay, so it's cold, it's high pressure, and, you're disrobing in front of your coworkers, and that's not the best environment. They're certainly not so pleased with the guys that are at the end of the funnel, okay? Those individuals are not getting the hey, thanks for coming out and helping us. I'm sure it's not a comfortable process, but we need to decon, and when you need to do decon of hundreds of people, that's the way to do it. And you have to funnel them through this area so that when they exit, they can go to treatment, or they can then be evaluated. But we know everybody who goes into treatment has been decon, and a big push for that is we don't want secondary contamination. We don't want somebody that sneaks around and brings, exposure into the treatment area and re-exposes everybody and exposes us. Okay, so that's important. Talks again about dilution, talks about isolation. Crowd control is a big thing. That's really is a difficult thing to do when you're on scene, but people, as a general rule, will follow directions when they're in an emergency. They're looking for somebody to take charge. They're looking for some direction. We keep bullhorns on the truck. You can use your overhead mics. Say, you take control, you let them know this is the direction to help, and then you set cones up and barricade tape. It's amazing how effective a thin layer of yellow tape is at corralling people, even though obviously you could just pull it apart. A 2-year-old could break through the tape, but it's a barrier. It's there. We're naturally set up to follow that, and it seems to be very effective. So anyway, that's chapters 8 and 9. Just know the different types of decontamination, what they would be used for in certain circumstances. They each have their different role. Know what gross contamination is. Know some dilution, definitely know adsorption, the differences between those, what solidification would be, and you should be good for the quiz.